In recent months, the South China Sea has become a focal point of escalating tensions, with the Philippines at the center of several diplomatic disputes. These strained relations extend beyond maritime boundaries, influencing interactions with multiple nations. Today, we delve into 10 countries currently exhibiting diplomatic frictions with the Philippines, exploring the underlying causes and recent developments shaping these complex relationships. Number 1. China. For years, tensions between the Philippines and China have revolved around the contested waters of the South China Sea, also known as the West Philippine Sea in Manila. This dispute reached a boiling point in February 2025 when a Chinese Navy helicopter dangerously approached a Philippine patrol aircraft near Scarborough Shoal, an area internationally recognized as part of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The provocative maneuver was labeled as reckless and unprofessional by Philippine Foreign Secretary Enrique Manalo, adding yet another layer of strain to an already fragile relationship. Despite a 2016 ruling by the Hague Tribunal, which dismissed China's sweeping territorial claims in favor of the Philippines, Beijing continues its militarization of the region, building artificial islands and deploying naval forces. Beyond military maneuvers, China's increasing presence in Philippine waters has significantly impacted Filipino fishermen and local communities. Reports indicate that Chinese Coast Guard vessels have been blocking Filipino boats from accessing traditional fishing grounds, often using water cannons and aggressive intimidation tactics. This has led to economic losses for thousands of Filipino families who rely on these waters for their livelihood. In response, the Philippine government has intensified joint maritime patrols with the United States and other allies, strengthening its security ties to counter China's assertiveness. However, Manila also walks a delicate diplomatic tightrope, as China remains a crucial trade partner, accounting for a significant portion of the Philippines' imports and exports. Despite the rising hostility, the Philippine government continues to push for diplomatic solutions, emphasizing adherence to international maritime law. In early 2025, Manila proposed taking China to another international tribunal for its continued environmental destruction in the Spratly Islands, accusing Beijing of large-scale damage to coral reefs and marine ecosystems. However, China's refusal to acknowledge such rulings makes enforcement difficult, leaving the Philippines in a difficult position. As tensions mount, the question remains, how far will China go in asserting its control? And how will the Philippines navigate this growing geopolitical storm? Number 2. Malaysia. The territorial dispute over Sabah, a resource-rich region on Borneo's northern tip, has long been a point of contention between the Philippines and Malaysia. The roots of this dispute trace back to an 1878 agreement in which the Sultan of Sulu granted rights over Sabah to the British North Borneo Company. The interpretation of this agreement remains contentious. The Philippines asserts it was a lease, implying sovereignty was retained, while Malaysia contends it was a cession, transferring full sovereignty. This historical disagreement continues to strain diplomatic relations between the two nations. In recent developments, tensions have escalated due to legislative actions and international filings. In November 2024, the Philippines enacted the Maritime Zones Act and the Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act, aiming to define its maritime boundaries. Malaysia protested, asserting these laws encroach upon its territory, including Sabah. Deputy Foreign Minister Muhammad Alamin stated that Malaysia would send a protest note to the Philippines, emphasizing the nation's commitment to defending Sabah's sovereignty. Earlier in July 2024, the Philippines made a submission to the United Nations seeking to extend its continental shelf from Sabah, a move Malaysia categorically rejected, reaffirming its indisputable sovereignty over the region. Despite ongoing dialogues aimed at resolving the dispute, the sensitivity surrounding Sabah hampers full normalization of bilateral relations. The presence of nearly 800,000 Filipinos in Sabah, many undocumented, adds a humanitarian dimension to the issue. In October 2024, the Philippines proposed establishing a bilateral mechanism with Malaysia to provide social services to these individuals, reflecting a pragmatic approach to managing the complex realities on the ground. While both nations express a desire for amicable solutions, the Sabah dispute remains a significant hurdle in Philippine-Malaysian relations. Number 3. Indonesia. The maritime relationship between the Philippines and Indonesia is complex, marked by both cooperation and contention, particularly concerning illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. The Sulawesi Sea, rich in marine biodiversity, has been a hotspot for such activities, with fishing vessels from both nations often operating without proper authorization. In 2019, Indonesia intensified its crackdown on illegal fishing, sinking 51 foreign vessels, including one from the Philippines, as a stern warning against unauthorized fishing in its waters. These assertive measures underscore Indonesia's commitment to protecting its maritime resources, but have occasionally led to diplomatic strains with neighboring countries, including the Philippines. Beyond fishing disputes, the porous maritime borders between the Philippines and Indonesia have raised significant security concerns, particularly regarding the movement of insurgents and militants. The tri-border area, encompassing parts of the Sulu and Celebes Seas, has been exploited by terrorist groups for cross-border activities, necessitating robust security measures. In response, both nations, along with Malaysia, have implemented coordinated maritime patrols and intelligence sharing initiatives since 2017 to curb these threats. These collaborative efforts aim to enhance regional security, but require continuous commitment and resources to address the evolving challenges posed by transnational crime and terrorism. Despite these collaborative frameworks, incidents continue to test the resilience of bilateral relations. For instance, in October 2024, Indonesia reported driving away a Chinese Coast Guard vessel that disrupted an energy survey near the Natuna Islands, highlighting the broader regional complexities affecting maritime security. Such events emphasize the necessity for the Philippines and Indonesia to maintain open communication channels and strengthen their cooperative mechanisms to effectively manage and resolve maritime disputes and security concerns. Country number 4. Vietnam. The Philippines and Vietnam have long been entangled in overlapping territorial claims in the South China Sea, particularly concerning the Spratly Islands. While these disputes have occasionally led to diplomatic strains, both nations recognize the greater threat posed by China's expansive maritime assertions. This shared concern has prompted Manila and Hanoi to prioritize collaboration over contention, aiming to present a united front against external pressures. In a significant move towards bolstering regional security, Vietnamese Defense Minister Phan Van Giang and Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro met in August 2024 to advance defense and military relations. The discussions culminated in plans to sign a memorandum of understanding on defense cooperation by the year's end, focusing on joint maritime security initiatives and disaster response. This partnership underscores a mutual commitment to resolving disputes through peaceful means and in accordance with international law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. Further solidifying their alliance, the Philippine and Vietnamese Coast Guards conducted their inaugural joint exercises in August 2024. These drills, which included firefighting and search and rescue operations, aim to enhance interoperability and build trust between the two maritime forces. Such collaborative efforts not only strengthen bilateral ties, but also serve as a strategic countermeasure to external assertiveness in the region. By prioritizing cooperation and mutual support, the Philippines and Vietnam strive to maintain stability in the South China Sea, ensuring that their shared interests are safeguarded against broader geopolitical challenges. Country number 5, Taiwan. The relationship between the Philippines and Taiwan has been periodically strained due to disputes over fishing rights and concerns regarding the treatment of Filipino migrant workers. A notable incident occurred in May 2013, when the Philippine Coast Guard fatally shot a Taiwanese fisherman in the Balintang Channel, an area with overlapping exclusive economic zones claimed by both nations. This event led to heightened diplomatic tensions, with Taiwan imposing sanctions on the Philippines and demanding a formal apology. In response, both countries engaged in negotiations to establish clearer maritime law enforcement protocols to prevent future conflicts. Beyond maritime disputes, the welfare of Filipino migrant workers in Taiwan has been a pressing issue. As of November 2023, approximately 754,130 registered migrant workers reside in Taiwan, with Filipinos constituting a significant portion. Many are employed as factory workers, domestic helpers, and caregivers. Reports have highlighted challenges such as high brokerage fees, excessive working hours, and inadequate legal protections. Notably, domestic workers and caregivers are often excluded from Taiwan's Labor Standards Act, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation. Advocacy groups have been vocal in urging the Taiwanese government to implement comprehensive labor reforms to safeguard the rights of these workers. In an effort to address these concerns, both governments have initiated bilateral talks aimed at enhancing the protection of migrant workers and resolving fishing disputes amicably. Collaborative measures, such as joint Coast Guard exercises and the establishment of direct communication channels, have been proposed to foster mutual understanding and prevent future incidents. While challenges persist, these initiatives reflect a shared commitment to strengthening Philippines-Taiwan relations through dialogue and cooperation. Country number 6, Kuwait. The welfare of Filipino overseas workers in Kuwait has been a persistent concern, marked by reports of abuse and maltreatment that have strained diplomatic relations between the two nations. In January 2023, the tragic death of Julabi Ranara, a Filipina domestic worker whose burnt body was discovered in a Kuwaiti desert, underscored the vulnerabilities faced by migrant workers in the Gulf state. This incident prompted the Philippine government to suspend the deployment of first-time domestic workers to Kuwait, aiming to reassess and enhance protective measures for its nationals abroad. In response to these challenges, both countries engaged in extensive negotiations to address labor concerns and improve worker protections. By June 2024, an agreement was reached to lift the respective bans, allowing the resumption of worker deployment under new conditions. Key provisions included the establishment of a joint committee to oversee labor affairs, the implementation of a whitelisting system for reputable recruitment agencies, and the appointment of welfare desk officers dedicated to monitoring and assisting overseas Filipino workers, OFWs. These measures aim to create a safer and more supportive environment for Filipino workers in Kuwait. Despite these advancements, incidents of abuse have continued to surface, indicating that challenges remain in ensuring the safety and well-being of OFWs. In January 2025, the reported deaths of 2 Filipino workers in Kuwait led to renewed calls from Philippine lawmakers for a thorough review of bilateral labor agreements and recruitment policies. Senator Emmanuel Joel J. Villanueva emphasized the necessity of strengthening recruitment processes and ensuring host countries' compliance with agreements designed to protect migrant workers' rights. This ongoing dialogue highlights the critical need for vigilant enforcement of protective measures and continuous collaboration to safeguard the welfare of Filipino workers abroad.
Country number 7. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia hosts a significant population of overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, many of whom are employed in sectors such as construction, healthcare, and domestic services. While these workers contribute substantially to both the Saudi economy and their families back home, they often face challenges, including contract violations, non-payment of wages, and limited legal recourse. The kafala system, which ties workers' residency status to their employers, has historically granted employers considerable control over their employees, leading to situations where workers are unable to leave abusive environments or seek alternative employment without the employer's consent. Despite reforms introduced in March 2021 aimed at easing some of these restrictions, many workers, particularly domestic helpers, remain vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. In response to these ongoing issues, the Philippine government has actively engaged in diplomatic efforts to safeguard the rights of its nationals in Saudi Arabia. A landmark agreement was signed in 2013, reinforcing the standard employment contract for Filipino household service workers. This contract established provisions such as a minimum salary, rest days, and the prohibition of passport confiscation by employers. Additionally, mechanisms were put in place for the prompt resolution of labor disputes and the facilitation of repatriation when necessary. These measures aim to create a safer and more equitable working environment for OFWs in the kingdom. Despite these advancements, challenges persist. Reports from 2024 highlight systemic issues such as wage theft, unsafe working conditions, and excessive working hours. Notably, large-scale projects like NEOM, Saudi Arabia's ambitious mega-city initiative, have been criticized for labor abuses, with allegations of numerous migrant worker fatalities and disappearances. These ongoing concerns underscore the necessity for continuous monitoring, stricter enforcement of labor protections, and sustained diplomatic engagement to ensure the welfare and rights of Filipino workers in Saudi Arabia are upheld. Country number 8, Singapore. In 2014, plans by the Filipino Independence Day Council Singapore, PIDCS, to hold a Philippine Independence Day celebration at An City's Civic Plaza faced significant online backlash from certain segments of the local population. Critics argued that such a public display was inappropriate, leading to the event's cancellation due to public order and safety concerns. This incident highlighted underlying societal tensions and raised questions about the inclusivity of Singapore's multicultural ethos. Despite governmental efforts to promote social harmony and protect workers' rights, instances of discrimination persist. A 2019 survey revealed that 40.4% of Malay respondents in Singapore reported experiencing workplace discrimination, underscoring the challenges faced by minority communities, including Filipinos. Advocacy groups continue to call for more robust policies and societal initiatives to address these issues, aiming to foster a more inclusive environment for all residents. Country number 9, Hong Kong. In August 2010, a tragic incident unfolded in Manila when a disgruntled former Filipino police officer hijacked a bus carrying Hong Kong tourists, resulting in the deaths of 8 individuals. The mishandling of the crisis by Philippine authorities led to widespread outrage in Hong Kong, with many criticizing the perceived incompetence and negligence during the rescue operation. This event significantly strained relations between Hong Kong and the Philippines, casting a long shadow over diplomatic and social interactions. In the aftermath, anti-Filipino sentiments surged in Hong Kong,
affecting the city's substantial Filipino community, particularly domestic workers. Reports emerged of discriminatory attitudes and actions, including the termination of employment contracts for some Filipino workers, as emotions ran high. Despite official apologies and compensation agreements reached in 2014, residual tensions and occasional discriminatory attitudes persist, impacting social dynamics and diplomatic relations between the two communities. Country number 10, North Korea. The diplomatic relationship between the Philippines and North Korea is notably restrained, primarily due to global security concerns surrounding North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Formal diplomatic ties were established in 2000, yet interactions have remained minimal. In 2017, the Philippines, aligning with the United Nations Security Council's sanctions, suspended all trade with North Korea following its persistent missile tests. This move underscored Manila's commitment to international efforts aimed at curbing Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. While direct bilateral tensions are limited, the broader geopolitical climate and the Philippines' alliances, particularly with the United States and South Korea, influence its cautious stance toward North Korea. The Philippine government has consistently condemned North Korea's provocative actions, emphasizing the potential threats they pose to regional stability and the safety of Filipino overseas workers in neighboring countries. This cautious approach reflects Manila's dedication to upholding international security protocols while safeguarding its national interests.